What is going on, everybody? It is Ian here with Miller Garage, and today we are talking about one of the central components and processes of Airstreams, and that is rivets. There are around anywhere from like 3,000 to 4,000 rivets in an Airstream, obviously depending on size. And so, needless to say, they're a very important part of the process of renovating it, of even just maintaining your Airstream, because it's inevitable that a rivet will pop out or come loose or leak or any of those kind of things. And so it's good to know the types of rivets, where they're used, how they're used, as well as the different tools to use them. So this is kind of like a primer for rivets on Airstreams. So first we're going to talk about the two basic different types of rivets. The first type of rivet is the pop rivet, and that is the type that has the shank that is pulled, and that's what creates the clamping force behind it. These are generally for like your interiors, your belly pans, anywhere that it doesn't necessarily need to be watertight is where you're going to use a pop rivet. Now obviously sometimes we use them on the exterior, but it really kind of depends on location and application, and so we'll get into a little bit more detail on that. The second type of rivet is the solid or buck rivet, and these are pretty much exclusively used on the exterior, and these are going to be ones that are actually watertight, and they have more structural integrity and holding power just by how they are installed. Now I'm going to start by talking about the pop rivets, and we're going to talk about a few different types. And from what I have found, I mean, obviously there may be a few different kind of specialty pop rivets. I know like the awning rails are kind of a specialty pop rivet, but for the most part, your Airstreams are going to contain basically three different types of pop rivets. The first one is going to be just kind of like your standard type pop rivet. It has a normal domed head. It's usually you're going to want to use aluminum, obviously, because everything on the trailer is aluminum. Whenever you're doing the interior skins, it's aluminum. So make sure you're getting aluminum pop rivets. It's not a huge deal if it has a steel shank. And the shank is this part right here. That is what the rivet gun pulls on. Set these down. And then you have your head, and then you have your grip. And so the grip is basically the length of the backside, and you'll need to know that just as far as, if you're going through multiple sheets of aluminum or a rib or any of that kind of stuff, you want the, varying types of grip for that. Now, most of the time, somewhere between around a 1/2 inch is generally good for most of your Airstream stuff. The next type of common Airstream pop rivet is a large flange pop rivet, and as you can see, the head of it, or the flange, is bigger than the normal like 1/8 inch pop rivet, and this is generally used on the belly pan because obviously there's more weight being held down there, and so you want to use a stronger rivet than just the standard type. That extra flange size will help hold everything up there, so you don't have your belly pan just falling out while you're going along. Definitely don't want that. And then the last type of pop rivet is what's known as an Olympic rivet, and this is basically, it can be used for several different applications. Generally, they're used for an exterior repair, like let's say one of your exterior buck rivets ends up coming loose or whatever, it's leaking, and you gotta fix it. You can't access the backside, and we'll get into that later when it comes to buck riveting or solid rivets. And so you can put an Olympic rivet in there, and you can actually use a special tool called a rivet shaver to shave the head of it to where it looks like one of the solid rivets, and it's actually going to be much better sealed than a standard pop rivet because that head is flush. It also has better clamping power, and I'll show you why whenever we do some stuff in here. So those are the types of pop rivets. Now, tools you're going to need, rivet gun is obviously very important. This is my favorite. It's a Milwaukee M12 rivet gun, and it is electric, obviously. There's also pneumatic and manual. Do not try to use a manual. You'll hate life. So I definitely recommend either an air or pneumatic rivet gun or an electric rivet gun, and I love this one. I don't have to have a hose like running through everything. I can just grab it, go use it, and it's really fantastic. Lots of good power, all of that. So now I'll show you how we rivet. And this may seem very basic, but not everybody knows everything, so this is very much to give all of the information to all of the different types of people that may be watching this. So basically you're gonna have your hole drilled, and with these you generally want to go just a tiny bit larger than the size. So this is an 1/8 inch rivet, and we're not gonna use an 1/8 inch drill bit. We use a number 30 drill bit, which is essentially like one size bigger. It's ever so slightly bigger, and you generally have to like special order the number 30 bits or the number 20 bits for the 5/32 ones. All right, so we got our hole drilled, and I generally put the rivet into the gun first. You can put it into the hole first and then put it on. Either way, it doesn't really matter. And then insert it in, and then it basically, it pulls the shank, and that compresses the back, and then that is what fills the hole and creates that clamping power. And then the shank is still there, and generally it'll like fall back into the gun. Sometimes it doesn't, you just pull it out. Now the large flange rivets work exactly the same. The only difference is that they are 5/32 instead of 1/8 inch, so you need a number 20 drill bit for that. And while we're talking about drill bits and the stuff you're gonna need for this, let me just take a second and tell you guys about where I get all of my rivets, drill bits, sheet metal, so many of the things that I use, on a daily basis for working on Airstreams, and that is airpartsinc.com, and they have all of that stuff. They are, they're primarily a source for, aircraft stuff, for sheet metal and all that for aircraft, because Airstreams and aircraft are honestly made very similar, and so they have all of that. You can get the exterior metal, interior sheet metal, the belly pan stuff, and what I love is that I can get it in like a 40-foot roll, and I don't have to buy sheets, so I can then have long pieces. They also have like the exterior sheet up to the like 60-inch or whatever it is, I think, so for the large sections, and they have all the drill bits, all that stuff, everything you could possibly need for the sheet metal work, clecos. So go check them out. That is linked below, as well as their Instagram, so you can go follow them and see all of the creative ways that you can use their products. All right, so generally your different size rivets will have different hole sizes in your rivet gun, and they all work pretty much the same way. Sometimes hard to get the batteries out of. In that they have these removable tips for the guns, and it basically just screws out. This has a little storage thing on the bottom, so you have them all with you, which is super fantastic. You don't need a tool. You can do it all by hand. It's one of the reasons why I love this rivet gun, and I may buy another one. And that is now good to go for the 5/32. We have the larger holes over here, and the exact same way. Got to put the battery in it. I always forget to do that. And there you have it. Now for the last one, which is our Olympic rivets. Like I said, these are a little bit different. It pops the same way, but we finish it differently. So I don't know how well you can see. I'll try to get close-ups, but basically there is the shank is still sticking out of the head of the rivet. And so we need to come in and we need to cut that, and then we need to shave it. So I'm gonna get a drill and the rivet shaver, and then we will show you guys that process. All right, so we're a little closer in here, and you can see how the shank is still sticking out of there. So you basically get some wire cutters, dikes, whatever you wanna call them, and cut the very top of that off. And then this right here is a rivet shaver tool, and it basically has, if you can see that, there's a little, basically almost like a blade inside of there that's concave, and it spins, and it basically just flattens down, shaves down the top of it and gets it. This will be a little tricky with how, yeah, this might be a little difficult. I don't know how you're gonna be able to see, but And now, as you can see, the rivet looks just like one of the buck rivets. It's nice and flat and flush. And so that's going to seal a lot better. You can tell with regular pop rivets, it has that hole in it. And so water's obviously going to be able to get into that. With this, it creates more of a seal. Now these aren't, they're very, very good, but they're not 100%. So that's why, I've found some trailers where people have replaced, entire panels. Obviously, if it's an exterior panel repair and they can't get to the backside, sometimes that's the process. But if we can get it from inside and we have the skins off, I always recommend people replace Olympic rivets just because they're much more prone to leaking. They're not as strong, and inevitably they're going to be compromised in the future. So you don't want to use these for all of your exterior work, only if you cannot access the backside. If you can, buck rivet it. Trust me. And you can also see on the backside of the Olympic rivet that it splits into 3 prongs there, and that is what helps it be stronger and actually like clamp the aluminum together better. Again, it's not as strong as a buck rivet, but it's definitely better than just the regular pop type, which just kind of expands that head of the rivet and grabs the back. All right, so now the last type of rivet we're going to talk about are the buck or solid rivets, and these are for all of your exterior stuff. With Airstreams, you're going to have 2 general sizes, 1/8 inch and 5/32. Usually, if you can, you want to keep it 1/8 inch so you don't have to step up, because once you drill out a 5/32, you potentially could make the hole too big, and then you either have to try to fill it with like an Olympic rivet or potentially step up to an even bigger buck rivet. So you really want to try to keep the size of the rivet as small as you can in case subsequent work and repairs has to be done. Now I have a whole video on the process of how to buck rivet. It is going to be linked. So for kind of the more in-depth stuff, go check that out. I'm more just giving a general overview of the process and all that. So one of the key things with the buck rivets is actually the rivet length. And you can order them in a variety of different sizes. Like I have, the really short ones and the long ones, and then there's some in between. And there's also a tool that you can cut the buck rivets down to the exact size you need, because whenever it's in there, you want only a certain amount sticking out, and you basically want to compress it down to where that head doubles in size and you have a good clamp on the metal. So the process is quite a bit different from buck riveting and pop riveting. So with buck riveting, you're going to need a solid rivet type pneumatic air gun, and this is similar to like an air hammer in that this thing oscillates back and forth, and that's what does the hammering and the compressing of the rivet. The other thing you're going to need is what's known as a bucking bar, which is why it's called buck riveting. And this basically goes on the backside, and the rivet goes in between, and you're using that to compress the rivet on the backside, and that's what creates the clamping force. Once you drill your hole, you basically put the rivet in, and then you're going to put the hammer on the dome side, and then the bucking bar goes on the back. And you generally want to put force with the gun, not the bucking bar. And that is how it's done. So obviously, as you can tell, when you work on an Airstream, this is something that usually requires 2 people. So you have one person on the outside, one person on the inside, and you work together. It's lots of fun, especially when you're married. Good opportunity to practice communication. Or fight when you don't communicate well. Not that that would ever happen. So let me show you guys a little bit better angle so you can see it compressing on the backside. All right, so same as before, we put the rivet in the hole. And as you can see, it's sticking out the backside. And again, you want to adjust the length, and you'll kind of get a feel for it. But you want to be able to compress it to where it doubles in size of the diameter of the backside of the rivet. So put the gun on it, put the bucking bar on the backside. You don't want to push too hard because you don't want the rivet to go back out the other side. And then you just gently, and you'll get the feel for it. And there you can see that it is doubled in size, and that has clamped the rivet onto the sheet metal. So that is the basics of Airstream rivets. I do have some more in-depth videos on buck riveting specifically. Not too much that you can go further in depth when it comes to the pop riveting. It's pretty straightforward. So I hope this video was informational and beneficial for you. I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel, follow us on Instagram. We have a lot of cool things coming, so stay tuned for that, and we will see you next time.